Minister Narendra Modi congratulated Mark Carney on his election victory in Canada. In a post on X, Prime Minister Modi wrote, and I quote him here, "Congratulations, Mark Carney, on your election as the Prime Minister of Canada, and to the Liberal Party on their victory. India and Canada are bound by shared democratic values, a steadfast commitment to the rule of law, and vibrant people-to-people ties. I look forward to working with you to strengthen our partnership and unlock greater opportunities for our people." Unquote. All right, and to talk more on Mark Carney's victory, we are joined by Vikas Swarup, former High Commissioner of India to Canada. Welcome, sir. Appreciate you giving us your precious time. The contest shaped into a tight race between Liberal Prime Minister Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. What factors you think contributed most to Carney's dramatic turnaround in public support?
There was only one factor, Abhishek, and that factor is called President Donald Trump.
Yeah.
4 months ago, the Conservatives were leading over the Liberals by 20 percentage points.
Yes.
They were on course for their biggest victory ever. The Liberals were completely in the doldrums. And then President Trump took over the White House on the 20th of January, and almost immediately, he started making calls for Canada to become the 51st state of America. And I think it was that single factor which completely changed the course of this election. It united the Canadians. And then you see the problem with Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives were that they were seen as a mini version of Trump himself, because Trump is a conservative. They got tainted by association. And in Mark Carney, the Liberals had a leader who had steered Canada through the 2008 financial crisis, who had steered the Bank of England through the Brexit crisis. And he was seen as a steady hand and someone who would be able to stand up to Trump and steer Canada better economically. So in the ultimate analysis, I think there were three main factors: the departure of Justin Trudeau, who had become probably the most unpopular Prime Minister of Canada ever, the arrival of President Trump and his threat to annex Canada, and the arrival of Mark Carney as a steady former central banker who could steer Canada through these turbulent times.
Ambassador, also Canadians' biggest fear or concern is Trump's call for Canada to become the 51st US state, like you said. Also, it has sparked fierce backlash. Carney also said in his victory speech that Trump will never own Canada. You think handling Trump would be the biggest challenge for Mark Carney?
Easily, because you see, let's not forget, Canada is a prisoner of its geography. 77% of its exports go to USA, 90% of its oil goes to USA. So it won't be very easy for them to immediately diversify. So for that reason and that reason alone, Mark Carney needs to work with President Trump. He needs to work with the American political leadership in trying to ensure that the blowback on Canada from the threat of tariffs is minimal. Probably they'll have to renegotiate the US, Canada, Mexico agreement. And I think that's where Mark Carney is putting his hopes on, that, with his economic expertise, he would be able to talk Trump into toning down these tariffs, if not eliminating them altogether.
Ambassador, also, he's just short of a majority and faces maybe a divided parliament. Is that an issue too? Because tensions rise across the border and the cost of living continues to challenge the households there.
Oh, absolutely. Look, Canada faces a number of problems.
Yeah.
The cost of living crisis, the housing crisis. One estimate says they need at least 35 million more housing units. They have a shortage of doctors, the healthcare is in crisis, and of course the immigration system is now broken. The consensus on immigration that existed in the past is no longer there. So he faces a number of daunting challenges, but by far the biggest challenge is, of course, Trump and managing the tariffs, managing the tariff war. So the good thing is he's got 168 seats out of 338. They are just 4 short of a majority.
Yeah.
The NDP has imploded completely. The Parti Québécois, which is a separatist party based in Quebec, has not done as well as expected. So from that point of view, I think there would be wind in his sails, and he would be easily able to form the government and also probably continue it for the next 4 years.
Also, sir, you'll be able to answer this question better. How is Mark Carney different from his predecessor, Justin Trudeau? Is Carney more low-key and more of a manager?
Yes, Carney is definitely more low-key. Let's not forget, he was never a professional politician. This is the first time we had a prime minister who had himself not been in parliament. But of course, he has won his own riding in Nepean in Ottawa, and he has led the Liberals to this handsome victory. There's no doubt about that. But the difference from Trudeau is Trudeau was a pure retail politician who had an eye on the vote banks. And that's why the Khalistani vote bank became a very outsized factor in India-Canada relations. Mark Carney comes in with no such baggage. I have not seen any evidence that he is thick with the Khalistanis. So that factor alone, I think, makes him a better person for India to negotiate with. Secondly, he has declared himself to be a pragmatist. Now, Canada faces an existential threat from Canada, both economically and politically. So Canada needs to diversify. It needs to diversify its trade basket. And who better to diversify to than to the fastest growing major economy in the world, which is India. So my sense is, I expect India-Canada relations will be reset under Mark Carney. Yes, the Liberals are continuing, but they are continuing under a new leader. So I expect a speedy return of the High Commissioners to the two capitals and probably resumption of the negotiations on the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement.
All right, Ambassador, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you.
Moving on, Russian President Vladimir Putin